Welcome, and thank you for joining us for our monthly series, Healthcare from Your Dentist Chair. Today, our host, Dr. Amy Dayries-Ling, is joined by special guest, Dr. Jeffrey Gurian, a cosmetic dentist and author who will share how he learned through his own personal experience and years of study to eliminate things and thoughts that seem to be blocking him from achieving health and happiness. I'm Jane Lynn Britton, the Director of People Experiences at Know We Well. And before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to our webcast platform. If you're on a small device like your phone, please tap on the screen to see the resources that I'll tell you about. If you experience any technical problems, please click on the small yellow box with a question mark to help you troubleshoot. And for those of you using a computer, you will see multiple boxes arranged around your screen. You can move them around based on your viewing preference. To adjust the viewing size to be larger or smaller, click and drag at the bottom right corner of the box. We encourage you to enter your questions into the Q&A box throughout the program, and we'll answer as many as we can throughout, as well as at the end of the presentation. There's also a social media box. Click the icons to share key health insights and ideas through this program with your friends, family, and colleagues. You can learn more about our experts in the speaker bio box, and don't miss the valuable takeaways in the resources box. Click the links to access resources provided by Dr. Gurian, including access to his Stop Stuttering Now website, to find and purchase his books, to download the guided meditation that you'll experience at the end of this program, and to receive for free several chapters of his book, Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind. There's also a link to Know We Well's upcoming educational programs, and if you're not already a member of Know We Well, click on the link to get started for free with your regenerative whole health benefits, the all-in-one global online trusted solution to make your health and well-being journey easier. And finally, tomorrow you will receive an email with a link to the recorded version of today's program so that you can listen again at your convenience and continue to access these valuable resources. And now I have the pleasure of introducing you to your host, Dr. Amy Dayries-Ling. Dr. Amy is a general dentist and a holistic dentist. She's also a health and well-being advisor to Know We Well. She is a national spokesperson and educator for the American Dental Association, the Hinman Dental Society, and the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine, where she's also a fellow and faculty advisory board member. Dr. Amy is also a board member of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology, one of Know We Well's partners. Dr. Amy is the author of Solve Your Sleep for Better Health, Get to the Core of Your Snore. And she is the host of this monthly series, Healthcare from Your Dentist Chair. Welcome, Dr. Amy, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Jane Lynn. I'm so excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Jeffrey Gurian. And Dr. Gurian is a former cosmetic dentist and clinical professor at New York University School of Dentistry and the Oral Medicine Orofacial Pain Department, where he's taught and lectured for 12 years. Dr. Gurian has also lectured extensively to the doctors at Temple University, that's your alma mater, on his techniques for treating headaches and the physical symptoms of stress. Dr. Gurian is a board member and lectured at the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy. He's also lectured at energy psychology conferences on the gentle system of talk and touch that he has developed, known as the STAR therapy technique, which is an acronym for Spiritual Transformational Affirmative Resonance Therapy. STAR therapy is used to treat the physical symptoms of stress-related illness, including migraine-type headaches, head, neck, shoulder, and facial pain, ear pain, dizziness, lightheadedness, and tinnitus, often associated with TMJ dysfunction due to clenching and grinding the teeth. Dr. Gurian is a Renaissance man. He's also worked as a stand-up comedian. He's really done all kinds of things in his life, which you'll be hearing about. He's written and worked with some of the biggest stars in show business. He's the host of Comedy Matters TV, an internet channel with over 500 videos where he's done interviews with A-list comedians like Jimmy Fallon, Chelsea Handler, Chris Rock, Bob Saget, Amy Schumer, Jim Carrey, and so many more. Dr. Gurian's also created The Happiness Show with the help of Sirius XM Radio. Dr. Gurian's the author of 7 books, and his 6th book, the first in which he refers to his series called the Happiness Series, is called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. It attained bestseller status on Amazon. And this is what prompted me to ask Dr. Gurian if he would come on this show today and chat, because as some of you all out there might know, I had a heart surgery myself about 14 months ago. I discovered in my healing process Dr. Gurian's book, found out he was a dentist of all things, and I really felt like some things that he talks about in his books resonated with some parallels in my life. So without further ado, Dr. Jeffrey Gurian, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Amy. That's so nice of you. What a great introduction. And, you know, I'm so struck by the way that we met, by the fact that my book was able to help you was so meaningful to me, because you never know what words you say that could be helpful to another person. It might seem so simple to you, but sometimes you say something that someone else really needs to hear. And when you contacted me, it really made my day to know that I could help you get through your recovery with heart surgery. And, you know, a lot of people, the title of the book is Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, but it wasn't really about heart surgery. It was about releasing the wounds that I talk about, you know, from the time we're children. We collect what I call heart wounds. Every time someone hurts your feelings or breaks a promise to you or hurts you in some way, breaks up with you in a relationship, we carry that with us in our heart chakra. And I refer to them as heart wounds. And they affect every decision that we make. They affect our self-esteem, they affect our self-confidence, and they affect every decision that we make. Because every time you're called upon to make a decision, you think about what to do. You use your thoughts. And if some of your thoughts are negative against yourself, if some of your thoughts, I call them invalid thoughts, and we're all holding them. And very often they were given to us by people who didn't have our best interests at heart. So if you're holding negative thoughts, your decisions are not going to work out for you. And that's why people tend to have recurring patterns in their lives, like the same bad job over and over again. They leave one job, they get another job, the same thing happens. Or the same bad relationship. They keep breaking up with people, meeting someone else, and the same thing happens. And the only common denominator is them. You know, you keep showing up in your life. And so it can't only be all those other people. It's because we're holding thoughts that are not valid. And the essence of that book was learning to release the negative thoughts and replace them with positive thoughts, which was what I had to do to cure myself of a severe stuttering problem. And so, again, I'm just, you know, I don't want to go on and on about that until you ask me, but it was very meaningful to me that my book touched you that way.
Oh, it did very much. You mentioned in the book some of the hardships that you went through, that you endured when you were going through school as a dental student. And I wanted to talk with you about that some. I think some of that happens, there's an indoctrination process that happens in some of the professional school programs that people go through. And in our case, I think it's so critical to bring to light, because we break through people's regular social bubbles when we work on them as dentists or as healthcare providers. And we really need to be present for who that soul is that's in front of us in that body. And I think that some of that gets lost when we're so left-brained trained. It's amazing that you got over a stutter as well, and here you are speaking, teaching, doing stand-up comedy. It's amazing.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that you brought up dental school, because that was such a traumatic time for me. When I was 12 years old, and I must have been a really strange kid, but when I was 12 years old, I already decided I wanted to be a dentist, and I was already writing comedy. And I knew I wanted to be a doctor of some kind, but I was a very, very sensitive child, and my sensitivity overwhelmed me for many years. And it's something that I like to talk about, because many people fear their sensitivity, especially men. Men are taught, don't be sensitive, don't feel anything, block your emotions. which is not healthy in particular. The more sensitive you are, the more empathetic you are. As a doctor, it's very important to be sensitive. I once had a patient say to me, I think you'd rather hurt yourself than hurt me. And it was true, because I developed, it was very important to me to develop painless techniques of anesthesia. People fear a needle in their mouth. I mean, it's a scary thing, you know? And I was able to give all kinds of injections. People would actually come to me before they went to the surgeon, and they'd say, could you please give me the injections? And I would be like, okay, I don't mind doing that. Mandibular blocks, you know, the most painful palatal injections. I figured out ways to do them that would be more comfortable. A lot of dentists don't even use topical anesthetics. I went to a lecture once, and a dentist actually stood up and had the nerve to say, don't use topical anesthetic on children. It's good for them to feel a little pain. And I was so incensed that I stood up. I was like yelling. I was like, do you want to feel a little pain when you go to your dentist? I said that I think that's very poor advice, because that's why there are so many adults these days who are afraid to go to the dentist. It's usually something that happened to them as children. So I decided I wanted to be a doctor, but I knew I couldn't handle life and death situations. And I was having orthodontia at the time, and I thought, this is a great thing. I can make people look beautiful. I want to be a dentist, and I'll specialize in orthodontia. And so when I applied for dental school, I was accepted to 3 schools. One I didn't go to because it was too cold. You know, I'm very sensitive. So I chose.
You're in New York. It's cold up there.
Well, not as far. I went up to Buffalo. I was chased down by a snowstorm. I'm like, I can't do this. So I wound up in Philadelphia at Temple University, and I was expecting to be welcomed into the profession. And instead, it turned into a 4-year fraternity hazing, not only by the students, but by the instructors. And I was treated so poorly. They tried to take away my self-esteem and my self-confidence at every turn. I was humiliated, you know. It was at a time when it was popular to have a mustache and sideburns. I grew that, and I was banned from the clinic by a man who had a Confederate flag in his office and a sign that said, "The South will rise again." And I'm not making that up. This is he ran the Crown and Bridge department, and this other lunatic who ran the prosthetics department, they got together. They were like the 2 most powerful instructors in the school. And I was not allowed to get a chair in the clinic for 3 weeks. My advisor called me out in the hall one day and told me that I was a disgrace to the profession because I had a mustache. They wanted me to drop out of school. And it may sound funny now, but to a 21 or 22-year-old, maybe I was 23, it's torturous to be made fun of every day. When we learned to give anesthetic, I was giving an injection in the patient's mouth. The needle was in the patient's gingiva already, in their gum tissue. And an instructor came by and hit my elbow and said, put the needle in further. These days, if that had happened, it would be considered assault. So anyway, I graduated at the top half of my class. I was not a disgrace to the profession. I graduated number 54 out of 126. My parents used to say to me, if you want to drop out, we'll understand. And I said, I will never let them get the best of me. My goal is to be a dentist. I never let anything stand in my way, which is one of the reasons that I wrote those books on happiness and empowerment. And I said, I'll have the last laugh. They can do this to me now, but I'm going to go out and achieve what I want to achieve. So it took me a couple of years. You know, when I got out of school, I wound up running a Medicaid office that had 4 or 5 chairs. And I got a lot of experience before I went into my own practice. And I wound up being a cosmetic specialist. I used to lecture on that and stuff. But many years later, where this story goes is truly amazing. Just before the pandemic, I got an email one day that the dean of Temple University would like to meet with me. He wants to come to New York and meet with me. Okay. And I thought to myself, well, what's this about? And I said, well, they probably want to ask me for a donation because because of the way I was treated, I never donated to the school. It took me many years to get rid of those heart wounds, because
Yes.
when people hurt you that way, you carry it with you. And it really, really affected me. It's a terrible thing to do to somebody. And so because I believe in confronting my uncomfortability, I accepted the invitation. And I went. And not only did he come, he came in with another dean. So it was two deans and me. And they took me out to this beautiful lunch. And I decided that I was going to use the opportunity to tell him what had happened to me. And I brought pictures of my before and after work as a cosmetic dentist. And I brought a screenplay that I wrote. It was called Almost Cut My Hair. It was a movie about my experience in dental school.
Almost.
And I had all these plans to tell him this story. And I started to tell, and by the way, he was not the dean when I went to the school. He's the new dean who's been there about 10 or 12 years. I started to tell him my story, and he interrupted me. And he said, I want you to know that those doctors were racist and anti-Semites. And thanked him. I stopped. I was shocked. I said, you know, I always thought that. He goes, they treated a lot of people that way. You were treated the worst. He goes, and he knew about it. And he said, we've changed the entire environment of the school. We would never allow that anymore. There's so much diversity in the school. When I went to the school, there was one woman in my class, one woman, and she wound up marrying one of the instructors. There was no diversity at all. And it was, so they wound up inviting me to lecture at Temple. And at the end of our talk that day, he said, do you mind if I give you a hug? I said, I would love that. And I have pictures of me with these two deans. And it was truly an amazing experience. And he wound up having me give a series of weekly lectures to the doctors at Temple about my star therapy and about also about thought. His guidance was how to change frustration to enjoyable and hate to love. And one of the lectures was on what we're going to talk about today, on how to take away pain with your hands.
I do want to get into that. We've had somebody already ask, how did you find out about the power of the mind and healing? And I know that you write some about this in your book as well. So you had some really excellent slides, but you also talk about in your book how when you were a small child, you started realizing some things about yourself, what you could do, like with your sister, for example.
When I was only 6 or 7 years old, I already knew that I could take away certain pain with my hands. And that's very interesting to me because no one taught me that. My parents didn't know anything about it. And it came to me naturally that if I could put my hands, I used to do it on my sister. If she had like a stomach ache or something, I would just take away the pain and I would do it on myself. And it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't like anybody taught me that. It opened my mind to the concept of past lives, because sometimes little children are born with gifts. Like you read about these 3-year-old piano prodigies. And it's like, wow, this is truly amazing. And it makes sense to me. I try and open my mind to all positive thoughts because it's arrogant to say that you know that something isn't true or not, right? And so to me, it makes sense that there could be a thing as reincarnation, that when a person leaves this plane and transitions to another plane, the body stops moving, but the spirit is energy. So maybe it goes somewhere else, you know? And that's the essence of spirituality, which I talk about a lot, and it's very different than religion. And I want to just briefly state that. Religion can be wonderful for people, but it tends to divide us because it puts you in a category, and other people are automatically outside that category if they're not part of your particular religion. Spirituality brings the whole world together because all it asks is that you believe in a power greater than yourself. And you could call it anything you want, nature, the universe, God, whatever you want, as long as you know it isn't you. Because if you think it's you that's controlling everything in your life, you tend to blame yourself when things don't go the way you would like them to. And very often that happens. Things don't go the way we'd like, and we say, well, I should have done this, and I could have said that. And you're engaged in blaming yourself when you have to realize that that was your path, and you're not being punished. You're supposed to have something better than that. And if you got the thing that you wanted, you wouldn't be available for the really good thing that's coming to you. So that's a spiritual type of thought, spiritual wisdom, I call it. And people who are suffering with emotional illness, they need new thoughts. And that's part of star therapy. The S stands for spiritual. You already know all your thoughts. And if your thoughts are not working for you, and you're not happy, and you're in a depressed state, then you need a new way of thinking. And very often those new thoughts are spiritually based wisdom, so that you're not worrying about the past or worrying about the future, that you can be in the now. Like right now, our now is you and I are talking on the internet. That's it. That's my whole life. Right now at this moment, I'm speaking to Amy, right? And so I'm very present for it. I'm not thinking what I have to do later or this morning. I'm here with you right now. And that takes time to learn, you know? So, you know, I interrupted myself. The temple story, I wound up being so close to these people. The dean even said to me himself, he goes, can you ever imagine that the dean of the dental school that tortured you like that would be asking you to speak? Not only did I lecture for them, I wound up doing a comedy show for them last holiday. I brought in a couple of comedians, and we did a comedy show for the staff and the faculty, and it was really amazing. And so it just shows you in life that you have no idea what can happen, that sometimes something bad that you label bad could turn out to be something really good years later. You know, we don't have that perspective to see that. And it's a very helpful way to get through life, you know? So I started, as I said, as a child, and then I realized that we all experience energy exchange on a very simple level. If you've ever been upset and someone gives you a hug and you feel better afterwards, it's because you allowed them to exchange positive energy with you. You trusted them, and you could feel their energy, which is why in many spiritual groups, people always hug each other, because it grounds you. It makes you feel safe. We're all still little children inside of us, you know. I very often talk about creating your own happiness center. If you came to my apartment, you'd think that little children live there, because it's filled with balloons and toys and crayons and all kinds of things. Because when you were a little girl and your friends would come to your house and say, can Amy come out to play? And you'd be all excited. That's not supposed to end just because you grow up and become a dentist, right? You're still supposed to stay connected to that inner child. And to me, maybe that's why I'm so connected in the comedy world, but it's very important to have humor in your life, to laugh, to look at things in a humorous way. You know, it's what got me through a widowmaker heart attack. It's what got me through COVID double pneumonia. And I'm sure we'll talk about that. But positive thinking is very, very important. And so when I was teaching at NYU, I was struck by the number of patients who came in that had TMJ symptoms that were undiagnosed. You know, if you wake up in the morning and your neck hurts, the last person in the world you would think to tell would be your dentist. As a layperson, why would you think to tell your dentist that your neck hurts? So you wouldn't. People take the information available to them and make an excuse that makes sense to them. So if you wake up in the morning and your neck hurts, your first thought is, well, my pillow's probably no good, my mattress is bad, I spent too much time at the gym. You're not going to say, you know, my sternocleidomastoid muscle is tender, or my temporomandibular joint is bothering me. You know, I better go check it out. Because you don't have that information on your hard drive, you know? And so
people don't always realize those trigger points might be connected to something they're carrying emotionally or about the jaw.
Right. It's so related to stress. The TMJ is considered a master joint. And I guess at some point I should probably use these slides that we set up. The learning objectives for today, some of the things that we're going to talk about is how to overcome fear, because that's a big thing for me to talk about fear. The principles of star therapy, the role of energy and spirituality in star therapy, how to stay connected to your inner child, which I just mentioned, and how to create your own happiness center. And this is a picture a very general picture, the TMJ, for people who don't know, because there may be some dentists watching this, but I'm assuming that most people are lay people. So the TMJ, you can feel it. It's the joint that allows your jaw to open and close. And it's considered energetically, on an energetic level, it's considered what they call a master joint, which means that it controls not only how your head feels, but how your whole body feels. It's the reason why a lot of football players and weightlifters use what they call a mora appliance to increase their physical strength. Because when you grind your teeth, if your teeth get shorter and your jaws get too close together, it weakens you. It takes away your physical strength. And there's an optimum amount that your jaws are supposed to be open to increase your physical strength. And so there are specialists who make these mora appliances, mandibular orthognathic repositioning appliances, that can increase your physical strength. And if you put your fingers in front of the center of your ear and you open and close your mouth, you can actually feel your TMJ. And if you hear a clicking noise, then sometimes it means that there is some stress in your TMJ. So when I went to dental school, I was so stressed out that I thought I had lockjaw. I didn't know anything about TMJ. I'm a new student there, and I'm waking up in the morning and I can hardly open my mouth. And I went to the clinic and they diagnosed me as a bruxer. Bruxism is a fancy word for clenching and grinding your teeth. And interestingly enough, you could tell people, I had people whose teeth were worn down to little stubs who would fight me on the fact that they don't grind their teeth. They insisted they don't grind their teeth. And I was like, there's no way that you could wear your teeth down that way if you're not grinding. People don't realize they do it because you don't do it during the day while you're awake, unless you're doing drugs. During the day, people often clench their teeth or do some kind of habit like pushing your tongue against your teeth, habits that people develop due to stress. At night, when you're sleeping, you could grind your teeth, and it doesn't necessarily have to make noise. So if you have a partner sleeping next to you, they might not hear it. Your dentist can diagnose it by looking for signs of wear. And there are so many different symptoms. I'm going to move that slide. Well, that's a stuttering thing. We'll get back to that because I cured myself of stuttering using some of the same principles, principles of thought.
Yes.
And thought is so powerful. And that's why we talk so much about releasing negative thoughts and replacing them with positive thoughts. Because my negative thinking created me a severe stuttering problem. And I stuttered through my 20s and beyond. Even as a dentist, I was blocking. And I'm not surprised because of what they put me through in dental school. And I think anyone could start stuttering after that. But we'll come back to that. As I said, so STAR therapy is a body, mind, spirit approach for the management of migraines and orofacial pain. And this is a slide that talks about the many kinds of symptoms that affect all different parts of your head. And I don't know, hopefully you can see it, but you can get all kinds of pain in your head, in your forehead, and your temples, migraine type pain. In this country alone, there's more than 150 million people who suffer with what they think are migraine headaches that are really musculoskeletal headaches that come from overuse of the muscles that control or that attach to your TMJ. And they're in the temple region, they're in the masseter region, and even behind your neck in the occipital region. If you put your fingers behind your head in that little bulge at the bottom of your skull, those are the occipital bones. They can very often be very tender when you touch them for people who grind their teeth. And believe it or not, even into the trapezius muscles, which is the reason that when you wake up in the morning, a lot of people wind up with a stiff neck or shoulder pain, and who would never realize that that's coming from your jaw. And so when I do the STAR therapy, which is like a guided meditation, I very often look for trigger spots. And I'll walk my fingers through a person's scalp, which is not easy with hair like mine, but I do. But I walk my fingers through their scalp to look for tender spots, which are called trigger spots, because very often you can have referred pain. You can get pain in another part of your body that's coming from a different place. And so when I find a trigger spot, I have to release it. And I do this, you know, STAR is star therapy. The R stands for resonance. Mm-hmm. The resonance refers to three things. The resonance refers to my voice, because I speak the whole time that I do it. It's like a guided meditation. It refers to music, because for more than 20 years, I've been using music by a man named Stephen Halpern, who is considered the father of New Age music. And at the end of our presentation today, I'm going to play a guided meditation. It's a miraculous story. I'll tell you a little bit of it. This past October, I got a message on my phone from a man who called me out of nowhere, and he said, "I'm calling you in reference to a letter that you wrote me 20 years ago. 20 years ago." And he never saw the letter until now. His assistant filed the letter away, thinking that it wasn't important, and he was working on his memoirs, and he came across this letter, and he said he was so moved by it that he wanted to track me down. And it was Stephen Halpern, a Grammy-nominated musician who is considered the father of New Age music. And I wrote to him to tell him that I was using his music to take away headaches from people in my office and later on at NYU. And he said he was so moved by that he wanted to see if he could find me and track me down. And we started talking. And now we talk all the time. But he said to me he wanted to put music to my words. And in my whole life, I would never think that I would have a project with Stephen Halpern, somebody that I admire, that I was listening to all these years. And at the end of our presentation today, I'm going to play you the guided meditation that we wound up doing together, which is amazing.
I used to listen to him back in the 80s. I used to listen to his work back in the 80s on the radio. They have a New Age music program on public radio at the time.
He has more than 80 albums, and now I'm one of them, it's beyond comprehension. As I said, you never know. Life is very magical that way, and you couldn't possibly predict something like that, you know? So I was talking about symptoms. So the R, resonance, stands for my voice. It stands for the music, but mostly it stands for a truth. If somebody says something to you that's true for you, that you need to hear, you'll feel it in your body. It'll resonate inside of you as a truth. So Amy, when you read my book, whatever it was that appealed to you about it, it resonated inside of you. It was something that you needed to hear. Very often it reaffirms us. Like sensitive people need to be reaffirmed. There's only so much knowledge in the world. It's all been said already, but it's been said in different ways. And sometimes, like, you can hear something over and over again and it never really sinks in, but one day it's like a light bulb goes off and you're like, wow, that's what that means. I really get it now. And so sometimes you're searching for something and the universe guides you to find a certain book or song or something. And that's how I think about it, that people find my book who need me. I don't really advertise much about my stuttering work, and I get calls from people all over the world who find me on the internet. And I often say to them, if you found me, there's a reason for it. You know, I once got a call from a woman in Egypt who asked if I did remote healing because she took her mother on a vacation and her mother fell off a camel and broke her neck and was paralyzed and in a coma. And she asked if I could do healing on her remotely. And I said, I've never done that in my life. I have no idea. But if you found me from Egypt, out of all the billions of people in the world, I'm supposed to do something for you, right? And it turned out that her mother didn't survive. But she said that I helped her. But she felt so guilty about taking her mother away and what happened to her, that by me guiding her, that she felt so much better. And now she realized why she called me. So you never know who you're going to affect. Your words.
That's the power of the mind and healing and the words, like you said.
Mind and healing. And I know that you get that it resonates with you because you're a kindred spirit, you know, and like finds like very often. So there are so many different symptoms that go undiagnosed. And I really think that dentists should be treating headaches. I always wanted to open up a headache clinic. And when I was at NYU, they saw me doing this work. You know, if you just walked into a university and said, hey, I take away headaches with my hands, they'll show you the door, I think. They'll call the police. You know? It's not going to be good. But they saw me doing this for 12 years. I was doing it, you know, hands-on work on patients in the clinic to take away headaches. And they wound up asking me to lecture. The head of oral medicine called me in one day, and I thought she was going to tell me they didn't need me anymore. I don't know why. That's still my negative thinking, right? If the boss calls you in, you don't know what to expect, right? And she said, we're underutilizing you. You should be teaching this, you know. And the head of the TMJ department had me do a session with him. I don't think he'd mind me using his name. Michael Gelb, his father wrote the textbook, TMJ.
Yes. He's a
Harold
famous...
Gelb. Yeah, he's
very well
very TMJ circles, and he had me do my treatment on him, and afterwards he had me lecture to his postgraduate students on how to take away with your hands. And it's basically transferring energy. If you allow your hands to connect to your heart, and you have to be sensitive to do that, you know, the same way that you hug someone that you know, you can transfer energy to strangers as well. Because I think of it this way. When a child is hurt, you hold them. You hold them to make them feel safe, and you tell them it's going to be okay. Well, that little child is still inside of you. You may look grown up, you're an adult now, but that little child lives inside of you. And every part of your body is like a child, believe it or not. So when you have pain in a part of your body, you get nervous. You're fearful because you don't know what's going to happen, and you don't know how bad the pain is going to get. And so holding is very important. You know, you can't hug every patient, but the way you touch people is very important. Putting your hand on someone's shoulder. I'm a board member of the Association for Spirituality and Psychotherapy for 20 years. Most psychotherapists are taught never to touch their patients. When I went to dental school, they actually told us never shake hands with a patient. Don't do, I mean, the stuff that they taught was so ridiculous, but that's what we were taught. Never shake hands with a patient. Don't touch them that way. Meanwhile, dentistry is such an intimate profession. You're actually cradling the person's head in your hands when you're working. How much closer can you get? So we're in a very unique position to do that kind of healing work, you know? And so that's what the spiritual part of star therapy is. When people are emotionally ill, they're lacking certain thoughts. They're engaged in negative thinking. They have a negative worldview. And in order to change that, you have to give them new thoughts, and those new thoughts are spiritual wisdom. And because it's so powerful, that's where the T comes in, the transformational. Because I have the experience with my stuttering work. Some people have told me that just by reading the information I send them, that they stop stuttering for a day or two before we even do any work, just reading the information, because information can be so powerful that when you take it in, when you internalize it, it can literally change your life. And to me, that's fascinating. And so the A in star therapy is for affirmative, because I use affirmations to reprogram the way you think. Affirmations are very important. I created them in order to cure myself of stuttering. And that story briefly went like this, that I realized one day I didn't stutter when I was alone. I could go into a room by myself and I could speak fine. I only stuttered when I was trying to talk to somebody else. And I consider it grace that I was able to figure out that you can't have a disability based on your location, right? If a man has a limp, he limps in every room of his house. You can't go into a room and close the door and walk perfectly. But if I could speak better when I'm alone, then theoretically it means there's nothing wrong with me. It's something I created in my mind. And I looked at it as kind of a stress-related habit. So when I went to college, I made myself run for the president of the freshman class. It was the scariest thing I could do. But I always talk about confronting fear and uncomfortability. And for some reason in my life, I've had many fears, but I've always found a way to confront them. And I told myself if I could win the election, I wouldn't have to stutter anymore. And I won the election. I was the president of the freshman class, and I still stuttered. And it was a great lesson for me because it taught me that outside validation in life doesn't work. It doesn't matter how many people tell you you're wonderful and fantastic. It matters what you think of yourself. And so I worked on myself. I took the next few years to work on myself, and I basically took my mind apart to examine my thoughts, which is not easy to do because we tend to believe all our thoughts, Amy, right? You tend to believe your thoughts, especially if you have any intelligence, you think your thoughts are correct. But the interesting thing is that your thoughts are not based on your experience. They're based on your interpretation of your experience, which is why you can have two siblings that are completely different people. They grew up in the same household, and you'd think they had different parents. And if you asked them to tell you about their childhood, you'd be sure they grew up in two different households. But people interpret their experience in a different way, and they have different thoughts. And so, again, you have to examine your thoughts to see what thoughts you're holding that are not proper for you. Very often, they work against you. Negative thinking, you know? So what I think about myself is that I must have had to take an inferiority complex and turn it into a superiority complex, not to feel better than other people, just to feel even. I liken it to a piece of paper. If I have this piece of paper and I fold it in half, if I want to get rid of the crease, I have to fold it in half 180 degrees the opposite way in order to get rid of the crease so it's flat again. And that's what I had to do. I had to completely change my mind, which is why, again, that book that you read is called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind.
Yes.
A spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness, because it's filled with spiritual thoughts, but also a lot of humor, you know, in looking at life in a humorous way. When I had my heart attack, and thank God that you got through what you went through, we had a similar thing. I had what they call a widowmaker heart attack. And while I was on the operating table, I wasn't fully asleep. And I was still joking with the surgeon because I felt that they were unplugging my artery. And I felt it. And I said to the guy, I said, I feel you in my heart, not in a romantic way, but I feel you in my heart. And the whole staff, they were laughing that a guy on the operating table is joking with them, you know. And I was back on stage 5 days later. I was performing in a club in New York. Jeez. And the owner of the club said to me, "What are you, crazy? You just had a heart attack." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's hard to get a spot here. I don't want to lose my spot."
That's funny. We have some questions that are coming in, so I'm going to take this as a second to ask you a couple of them. And one is, did you incorporate laughter therapy in your dental practice? And there was another question. Also, when you stopped stuttering, was it gradual or kind of almost immediate once you kind of hit a certain point?
It was very gradual. And the interesting thing, I was very nervous. Before I stopped stuttering, I was very afraid. And I explained that to stuttering patients that I work with, that that's going to happen to you. Because as much as you hate stuttering, it's so much a part of your identity, especially if you've been doing it for many years. You think to yourself, who will I be if I don't stutter anymore? Who will I be? I'll be a whole different person. It's very hard to grasp that when you're going to get better. I've heard about that, too, with people who lose a lot of weight, like they lose 100 pounds. It takes a long time to look at yourself in a different light because you're so used to seeing that thing. And as much as I hated stuttering, if I had to describe myself, I would have to say I stuttered because it was part of my identity. So it was a very gradual change. And I had to keep giving myself permission to get better, to let it go, because my subconscious mind developed a need for me to stutter. It's not a conscious thing. No one ever said, I think I should start stuttering. And what I tell people is, it's not important to ever say, this is exactly why I started to stutter, but it's very important to look at all the possibilities. And there are many different possibilities. And it's the same thing for everything. I talk a lot about stuttering, but it's really a bigger story. It's about overcoming obstacles in your life.
Definitely.
And how you think about the obstacles, which is why my most recent book is called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration. because all of us get obstacles. And you can either let the obstacles crush you, or you can find that inner strength inside of you that sometimes you don't even know that you have, and you can overcome that obstacle. And I've had to battle fear my whole life. I'm not really sure why, you know. I use this statement, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a second to read this quick statement. But
please do.
It's so powerful, and I call it About Fear, and I'll tell you where I got it from. But our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We were born to manifest the glory within us. It's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. To me, that's a powerful statement I ever read, and I carry it with me every day in my pocket because I believe that you internalize things that you carry with you. And what it's basically saying was, it's okay to be successful, and it's okay to be whoever you want to be. Because if you conquer your fear and you become who you want to be, it's not like you're bragging. It's you become an inspiration to other people to show them that they can do it also.
Yes.
So I didn't do magic. If I stop stuttering, you can stop stuttering. If I was able to conquer, you know, I have these fears of traveling. I made myself go to Japan alone in 2019. The scariest thing I could ever think of to do. I went to Japan for 2 weeks. I hardly spoke Japanese. I took level 1 3 times, but I went. I was lost every day. Flying scares me because of my ADHD. I have very serious confusion from ADHD, and I never know where I am. I'm lost all the time. And Japan, they openly say they have the most complicated subway system in the world. I went from Tokyo, Kyoto to Osaka. I went on the train every day. I was lost every single day, and I made it. I asked people in Japanese how to get by. I found people that spoke English. I performed in 2 comedy shows while I was there. I went to 2 spiritual meetings while I was there. I didn't let anything stop me. And, you know, some genius once said this, and it really stuck with me, that courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is having the fear and doing it anyway. And that's what I had to learn, which is what led to my second happiness book called Fight the Fear, Overcoming Obstacles That Stand in Your Way. And in that, there's a whole chapter on my trip to Japan and how I went to the Cannes Film Festival. I had some films in the Cannes Film Festival, and I went alone. Again, I went to France, I went to Spain and Italy. I believe fear is a bully, Amy.
Yes.
You know, fear is a bully that tells you that you can't accomplish certain things.
I enjoyed that chapter. And I don't know, the one that you're referring to in your new book about fear, about when you travel to Japan, because it might not sound like a big deal to some people out there, but you had grown up in a small neighborhood and you like being able to walk places or go short distances. So this for you is a really big deal to travel by yourself to a completely foreign place.
Right. And what I have to tell
fears, so I just wanted to put that in perspective for people.
Thank you. And what I had to tell myself, I grew up in a very middle class. Nobody went anywhere. You know, if you played tennis, it was like you played polo. It was like a very small kind of neighborhood growing up. And, you know, I didn't get on a plane till I was 21 years old. And because of my ADD, it's hard for me to travel. I'm literally always lost. It creates a lot of fear and confusion. And I had to tell myself, you know, the airports are filled with millions of people who travel like it's nothing. And if they can do it, I have to do it too. I can't hold myself back. It's not like skydiving or something where I have to be afraid. I have to be able to do the things that other people do. And so that's how I approached it. You know, when I had COVID double pneumonia, by the way, today is my 2-year anniversary of being in the hospital with COVID double pneumonia.
Oh, wow.
And I have to say, yeah, it was crazy. I got it. Well, I'm a trendsetter. You know, I got it right away when it first came out. I didn't want to wait. I went right out and got it. And believe me, I had to fight very hard to stay positive because it happened when New York was the epicenter of the virus, and they had run out of rooms in the hospital. They were putting people in the hallway already, and I had to fight very hard to stay positive through that. They kept me there for 4 days until they stabilized me. My blood pressure was collapsing. My diastolic pressure, instead of 80, was 42, and I had nonstop fever. It was a nightmare, but I had to remind myself. There's a tendency to say, "Why me?" when something like that happens. Why this happened to me? The spiritual answer is, why not me? Because whoever promised you that your life is supposed to be perfect and that nothing was supposed to happen to you? So I had to work very hard, because when you're in a negative state, your immune system is not functioning as well. And when you're in a positive state, it's easier to fight things off. And to the person that asked if I use humor in my practice, I never told jokes to patients. I don't like doctors who try to tell jokes. People don't come. I created an atmosphere of humor, let's say that. I had pictures on the wall of the famous comedians that I worked with. But patients would say to me, "Are you sure you're in comedy? Because you're so serious." Because I never wanted people to think that I wasn't taking my work seriously. When a patient comes to you, it's an honor. If someone trusts you with their health, I consider that a great honor. So I would never destroy that by trying to tell jokes. People don't come there to hear jokes. A lot of times they're in pain and they want to be comforted. And that's what I would do. And they knew about my other career because I was profiled on a lot of TV shows. All the news shows did stories about me, and I had a cover story in the New York Times and things like that. So people knew, but I didn't make it part of the practice. I just created an environment of humor, is how I describe it.
Gotcha.
I don't think.
I have another question when you get a minute. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, please. Tell me your question.
Well, it's from a dentist standpoint. So my experience working, a lot of times you worked as a cosmetic dentist, and a lot of times the teeth have had this massive amount of attrition. They don't look the same when somebody's 50 as they had when they were 16, and they want to restore and go back to that. But a lot of times there's trauma, occlusal trauma, bite trauma, sometimes physical trauma, emotional trauma, spiritual trauma that patient's experienced. How did you weave star therapy maybe into your cosmetic practice? Does that make sense?
No, it always makes sense. But it's a way of, from the time I greeted people, it wasn't like I was always doing star therapy. I did it when it was called for. I got a call one day from an emergency room, a patient of mine. They were about to do a brain scan on her. The pain in her head was so bad. She was experiencing suicidal ideation. That's how bad the pain was. And some genius in the emergency room said to her, "By any chance, do you wear a dental appliance? Do you grind your teeth?" And she called me and she said, "Is there any chance?" She goes, "I had stopped wearing my night guard. Is there any chance that that's where the pain is from?" And I said, "There's a very, very good chance. Before you let them do anything invasive on you, go home and try that. Put your night guard back in." And that turned out to be what it was. And that's how bad the pain can get. When people have these so-called migraine headaches, it ruins their life. They can't function. I mean, it's hard enough to function if your back hurts or if your leg hurts. But when the pain is coming from your head, how can you think straight? It's not possible. So it's not like I use star therapy in every single facet of my practice. I used it when I needed it, but it's more of a philosophy of how you greet people, how you make them feel at home. My patients felt like family to me. Very often they would hug me, at the end. It was a way of practicing to make people feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's the energy that you transfer to people that makes them feel comfortable. You treat people like they were guests in your home. That's what I would tell my staff. When people come in, these people are guests in your home. And that's how you treat them. And that resonates with people. It makes them feel comfortable. Once, if you don't hurt somebody with the injection, they're your patient for the rest of the procedure. If you hurt somebody with your anesthetic, If you give them a painful injection, they're nervous for the rest of the appointment. They're expecting more pain. They're going to be like, what's next, right? But if someone can come in and say to you, are you going to give me an injection? And I say, I already did. They're like, well, really? That's amazing. And they're comfortable for the rest of whatever you have to do. I used to work on little children, and I would use techniques to make them feel comfortable. And I could give them an injection and show them that it squirts like a water gun. And I would do it in front of their parents, you know, and I never had problems with that. So again, so it's not like I'm using star therapy constantly. I used it specifically for people who were suffering with TMJ, but I brought that essence, that energy to everything that I did, which I think is important to do.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to be an expert at that. You already have the power. Everybody has the power if you just open yourself up to it. If you allow yourself, like I said, you have to connect your hands to your heart. You have to connect your mind to your heart also, and realize that you're working on human beings and they have the same feelings that you do, and they're nervous very often, and you want to make them comfortable. That's the key, making people comfortable. And then you wind up with a big practice that way. You know?
Yes, it's compassion, showing compassion.
That's the word, compassion. When you were in the hospital, I'm sure nurses have tremendous compassion. Much more so, it was my experience. When I was in the hospital with COVID, some nurses would come and sit on the bed with me and take my hand and say, don't worry, you're going to be okay, you're going to make it. And those little acts of kindness are so important. I can't stress that enough. When the ambulance crew came to my house to get me, you know, they weren't just taking anyone, by the way. When I called, they interviewed me on the phone for my symptoms because there weren't enough ambulances. But when they heard that I had a heart history, and by that point I was bleeding from my nose already, it was crazy, all the symptoms I had. They said, we'll be right over. And they came in hazmat suits. And when I opened the door, and I always tell people, leave one of your doors open. If you ever have to call an ambulance, make sure your door's open. Because if you can't get to the door when they come, at least they have a way to get in. They don't have to break down your door. So my door was open, and there are two guys in hazmat suits, and one guy took my hand, and he said that same thing to me. He said, don't worry, you're going to be okay. And it was the first inkling that I had, because I had been alone for 2 weeks. You couldn't be with anybody. They put me in isolation in the hospital. But those little acts of kindness mean so much. Yeah. And then I got tremendous support from the comedy community. They announced it on the radio on Sirius XM. I had been a regular on Sirius XM for a couple of years. And they announced it on the radio that I was in the hospital. And I started getting so many messages from people. And I was too sick to answer anybody. But I have to tell you how much that means. I'm a big believer in the power of prayer and the power of thought. And when so many people are focusing their energy on one thing, I really think it has a tremendous effect on people. And I said afterwards, it's a shame that you have to be so sick to know that people care about you. Because, you know, in our everyday life, we're not really telling people that they're important to us. But it happened when I needed it, you know, and it took me a few months to recover. But a bunch of comedians made me a get well video, and a lot of people posted things. And I have to tell you, it was very, very helpful. Really incredibly.
It's great to be connected in your community like that. I know we need to kind of probably move into the meditation. So you also have a number of books out, and I wanted to have you at least mention your happiness series. They've been very meaningful to me, and I think they could affect a lot of people out there in a positive way.
Well, I have 8 books. I never thought I'd have even one book, but these last 3 books were what I call my happiness series. And I have them up here. Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness, is the one that you saw. And that's how we were lucky enough to connect, or I was lucky enough to connect with you so that we could do this today. And then that book became a bestseller on Amazon. I think people like The Meditating Dog, because it's not easy to get a dog. It's not easy to get a dog to sit in lotus position, you know? And then I took it a step further and I wrote Fight the Fear. I wrote these 2 books after I recovered from COVID. because I was in the house for many months, but you can only put out one book at a time. And I wanted to talk about fear because for the last 2 years, so many of us have been engulfed with fear. We're surrounded by fear, and we're sensitive beings, and we internalize the fear. And I wanted to talk about all the ways that I had to fight the fear. As I said, fear is a bully, and fear wants you to stay in bed with the covers over your head and not do anything. And so that's abhorrent to me. So I fight the fear on a constant basis, and I do everything that makes me uncomfortable. And this book also, it came out as a #1 release in medicine and psychology, attention deficit disorder, even adult children of alcoholics. There's a lot of spiritual wisdom in there that people need, because people who abuse substances, very often it's because of fear.
Yeah.
You know, and so many people deal with fear in different ways. And so that book is also very special to me. And then a few weeks ago, I just came out with the third, called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration, which are true stories that I started collecting in 1999, over 20 years ago, of courageous people who overcame unbelievable difficulties. My stuttering was minor compared to what these people overcame. A little boy, 3 years old, puts his hands in a machine and it cuts off his hands.
Oh.
And they reattach. His father was a surgeon, but not a transplant surgeon. They rush him to the hospital and there's no transplant surgeons available. So the father tries it on his own, assembles a team for 9 hours, reattaches the little boy's hands, but they're not functional. The grandfather is a martial arts instructor and trains that little boy every day growing up to reuse his hands. And today that little boy is a famous spinal surgeon, and he runs the spinal surgery department at a hospital in Colorado. That story blows me away. That is, to me, that's the most amazing thing, because, you know, any kind of surgery, you have to have manual dexterity, especially spinal surgery.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's an unbelievable story. The book is filled with stories of people like that who overcame major difficulties where other people might not be able to, and they went on to lead happy, meaningful lives. And so I hope that people who are listening, if this resonates with you, that they'll check out these books. They're available as ebooks and paperbacks, and Healing Your Heart is also an audiobook. And
it's beautiful, right?
Write them from my heart. And then, so now I'm going to go to, I think next is the guided meditation. This is fun. I didn't even see this slide. Billy Crystal. I'll say this quickly. These are some of the people that I have had the honor of working with. I was Joan Rivers' writer. I got to work with Jerry Lewis, you know, a legend. Billy Crystal, in this picture, he's pointing to his teeth because they wanted him to play me in a sitcom. His manager, Jack Rollins, who handled Woody Allen and Robin Williams, brought me to meet Billy Crystal many years ago and thought that it would be a great sitcom, a dentist in show business. And he thought Billy should play me. And that's why he's in a book that I did with Chris Rock. Chris Rock, who was on the Oscars last night. That was a crazy story. And that's Amy Schumer over here, who was the host of the Oscars last night. This is Amy Schumer, Jerry Seinfeld, who everybody knows, and Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, who had me open their show for them on Broadway, their hit show, Oh Hello. This is a scene. They're dressed in character for a scene that we did on Comedy Central. So it's been an amazing ride that I've been able to work with such talented people, you know. And let me see, I think then these are the resources for anybody who wants to get in touch with me. I always put my email up in case people have questions afterwards, Jeffrey@jeffreygurian.com. If you know anybody who stutters, please have them look at this website, StopStutteringNowGurian.com. There's over 3 million people in this country that stutter. And
wow.
They affect people around them. And the problem is people are not telling people that they can get better. Mm-hmm. And my message is that I try to give people hope. If I could do it, you could also do it. I didn't do magic. I just reworked my mind. And so that's a possibility for people. My main website is ComedyMattersTV.com. If you like comedy, there's a lot of fun stuff on there. And I also have a happiness channel where I do just lectures about happiness. The books are all there on Amazon. And let me go to the next one. I think that's maybe the guided meditation. Let me see if we're getting to it. This is the cover of the guided meditation. This is a picture that they chose. And it's just so amazing to me that I heard from him after 20 years, and now we're good friends. We talk all the time. And it's such an honor for me because his music has healed so many people. As you said, you started listening to him in the 80s.
I did.
Yeah, he's considered the father of New Age music. And just the fact that I would have him in my life, I had the opportunity. I did radio shows with Dr. Wayne Dyer, one of the leaders in business, and Marianne Williamson. And I got to know Deepak Chopra. And so for me to have Stephen Halpern in my Rolodex is beyond amazing to me. And so I want to thank you so much. I don't know how this is going to end. I'm going to play.
Well, I'm ready to do your meditation. And then I've been asking some of the questions as we've gone through. And I think you've covered a lot in a short amount of time, really. You have so much to talk about.
The hour flies by. Is there anything else you want to ask me before I start playing that?
No, I think, and then instead of having the questions and the answers at the end, we're going to end now, but do the guided meditation. Does that make sense to anyone out there? So last call for any questions, but I think we're ready to do our meditation.
In my way of ending, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. It's so great that we connected, and I thank you so much for having me on as your guest. I didn't let you talk too much. I have a lot to say.
Okay. but you have a lot to say, and I really wanted to hear what you had to say. So.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Okay, now I'm going to go to the guided meditation.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone enjoys it. And in this guided meditation, you can either listen or you can watch, because there's a visual aspect to it as well. But if you download it at the site, you can listen with your eyes closed. But it happens to have visuals with it also. So here we go. Welcome. This is Jeffrey Gurian, and thank you so much for joining me today in a meditation for releasing emotional and physical pain and uncomfortable memories. It's what I refer to as healing on a heart level. So please sit down in a comfortable chair, uncross your legs if they're crossed, feet flat on the floor, and with your arms at your sides, gently close your eyes. And allow yourself to breathe slowly and deeply to a count of 3. 3 in and 3 out. 3 in and 3 out. 3 in and 3 out. And just by the simple action of doing this with your eyes closed, you can already feel your body and your mind starting to quiet down. Just by the simple action of doing this with your eyes closed, you can already feel your body and your mind starting to quiet down. And I'd like you to be aware of your feet against the ground, and gently press your feet into the ground, feeling the connection between your body and the earth below, grounding you and connecting you to your first chakra, the root chakra, the chakra that gives you your identity and gives you strength. Just like the roots of a tree bring the tree nutrition and keep it from blowing over in a storm, all the while breathing slowly and deeply to a count of 3. And feel yourself drawing in the energy from the earth through your feet, almost as if your body was like a straw, drawing in the energy first into your feet, into your ankles, your lower legs, over your knees, into your upper legs, into your hips and lower back, into your tummy, and into all of your organs deep inside of you. And with every breath you take, you allow it to go deeper and deeper inside of you, to the very center of your being, bringing healing light into each of your organs. Then up into your solar plexus, the 3rd chakra, the color yellow, the chakra of your will and your ability to manifest things, up into your chest, flowing into your heart and filling your heart with light. The heart chakra, the color green, the chakra that all others must be connected to in order to achieve their maximum power and potential. And you're breathing slowly and deeply, and you allow yourself to feel this beautiful healing light flowing into your heart and completely filling your heart with light, knowing that light is so powerful and that light always overcomes darkness. For example, when you shine a flashlight into the darkness, not only does the darkness disappear, but it actually becomes light, because darkness and light cannot coexist. Unfortunately, light is more powerful than darkness. Where there is light, there can be no darkness. And darkness describes the pain you are holding and the uncomfortable memories that are trapped inside of you. So we use light to expose that negativity, and we allow ourselves to release that negativity to the universe. And after you allow the light to completely fill your heart, I want you to feel this beautiful healing energy moving to your throat, the fifth chakra, the color blue, the chakra of communication and change, moving into your lips, your tongue, the muscles of your face, creating the feeling of calmness and centeredness wherever it goes. And the beautiful thing is it knows exactly where to go and exactly where you need it. All you have to do is just be open to receiving it. Then finally let that energy move up to your forehead, to the sixth chakra or the third eye, the color purple, the chakra of clarity and intuition. And finally, up to the very top of your head, the crown chakra, the chakra of unconditional love and oneness with the universe, the color pink, the highest of the chakras, the chakra of perfection, the seventh chakra, the one we all work to achieve. And so with every breath you take, I want you to feel this beautiful energy flowing deep inside of you to the very depths of your being, to the center of your essence, into every cell and every fiber of your being. With every breath you take, I want you to feel yourself breathing in all beautiful things. Breathe in beauty and light and love and happiness directly into your heart, and again into every cell and every fiber of your being, from the tips of your toes to the tips of your fingers to the very top of your head, so that your entire body is completely bathed in light, this beautiful white healing light. And when we're finally finished, you're going to experience a very deep-seated feeling of happiness and well-being. A very deep-seated feeling of happiness and well-being. And each time you breathe out, I want you to allow yourself to let go of something you need to let go of, whatever that happens to be. And the nice thing is that it's not necessary to think of anything in particular or anything that bothers you. It's important to just give yourself permission to let it go and give it up to the universe, with the understanding that you can bring back any thought or experience you choose to let go of at any time you like. But for our purposes right now, I'd like you to give yourself the gift and the freedom to let it go. So again, with every breath you take, you breathe in all beautiful things. You breathe in beauty and light and love and happiness. And as you breathe out stress, tension, and confusion, and anything inside of you that you need to let go of. Anything that's causing you stress or pain, I emotional, or physical pain. And you allow yourself to understand that you don't deserve that pain and discomfort, and that you're willing to let it go and give it up to the universe. And now that your body is filled with this beautiful light, I want you to count backwards with me from 3 to 1. And as I say the number 1, I want you to take a deep breath with me. And as you do that, I want you to feel this tremendous surge of beautiful healing energy throughout your entire body. Not overwhelming, but just a perfect amount. And I want you to hold that breath for as long as you can. And as you're holding that breath, I'd like you to feel this beautiful healing energy going into every cell and every fiber of your being, filling you completely with this beautiful light so that you're actually glowing inside. And when you can't hold it anymore, I want you to breathe out forcefully so that you can hear it, like and in doing that, you allow yourself to release anything that may have still been trapped inside of you, anything that would be helpful for you to let go of. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Deep breath. And hold it. Hold it. Hold it. Until you feel the need to breathe out. And as you do, I'd like you to give yourself permission to release whatever else you need to let go of. And now, before you open your eyes, I want you to feel yourself coming back inside of your body and reconnecting to yourself. Because for the last few moments, you've been outside of your body. So I want you to come back inside and reconnect to yourself. Think of your name. Come back inside of yourself, just like fingers slipping into a glove. And feel how much better the fit feels because you allowed yourself to release some of what was trapped inside of you. And then slowly and gently, just allow your eyes to just flutter open and come back into the present, nice and easy. And I know that sometimes it feels so good that we just want to stay there. But it's important to come back into the present, nice and easy, and just sit quietly for a few moments and allow your body and your mind to process what you just experienced. And I thank you so much for allowing me to guide you on this little journey into your heart.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm in the zone.
Green place.
It's a beautiful energy. So in just a minute, we'll actually leave everyone in this beautiful energy. Thank you, Dr. Gurian, for sharing your expertise with us today and this meditation. And thank you, Dr. Amy, as always, for your expert insights.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jane Lynn, for all the work that you've done for this. It's really amazing. Just, you've been fantastic, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been my pleasure. We hope to have you back sometime soon. And to our viewers, thank you for joining us as well. As a reminder, you'll receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recorded program so that you can continue to benefit from the valuable information and the links we made available to you in the resource box on your screen, links to this beautiful meditation, Dr. Gurian's website, books, and his gift of free chapters of healing your heart by changing your mind. You will also still be able to access the Know We Well resources, including how you can get started for free with Know We Well's regenerative whole health benefits. Finally, when the webcast ends, a brief survey will pop up. We ask that you take just a moment to fill it out because your feedback is so important to us so that we can continue to offer the educational resources that are most helpful to you on your healing journey. Thank you again for joining us today, and be well.